Well, there's the first fish of the day. Probably a 2.5 pound smallie. That's what I'm up here trying to catch, a smallmouth. I'm throwing a bladed swim jig right now. We'll cover that a little later, but you can see they're starting to come up to spawn. Starting to come up into the shallower water. I caught her at about 5 feet, but let's get her back so she can go ahead and spawn. Good one. Not a bad one. Well, here's number 2. See if we can't get a couple more before this wind pushes us off the lake. There's one. Well, there's number 3. That one, they're getting a little smaller each time, but this one's got a couple battle scars here. But there's number 3 for the day. Let's see if we can't put a couple more in the boat. There's one. Feels like a good one. Oh, yeah, real good one. Oh, it's a tank. Ah, yeah, there we go. That's what I'm talking about right there.
Well, I just got back from my trip up to Pineview. Was fishing for some pre-spawn smallies. Ended up catching some largemouth too while I was up there. What I was fishing most of the day was your typical presentation for smallmouth in this time of year when the water temp is 48, 49 degrees when I got on the water. By the time I left, it had warmed up to about 51. So when I got out there, I spent about 4 hours throwing drop shots and Texas rigs and dragging curly tail grubs across the bottom. I just wasn't getting any bites. I had one small, something picked it up and ended up not getting a good hook set on it. But what I ended up deciding to throw is I decided I was gonna move shallow. I know it's a little early to move shallow for the fish. I was marking a ton of fish, a lot of schools out in 30, 40, even 50 feet of water still. But I decided I was gonna see if any of them big females or big males were starting to move up into the spawning flats yet. And lucky enough for me, I was able to get into a few. I found a couple largemouth up there too. So I ended up fishing in about, I would say, most of the time I was in 10 to 12 feet of water, but I was throwing up to the bank in about 4 feet and bringing it back out most of the time. I was able to get a reaction bite, and I ended up getting 5 fish in the boat in about an hour before I decided to leave. I would have stayed there and I probably could have caught a lot more fish, but unfortunately I got a little irritated when I dropped my brand new rod and reel in the water, lost about a $400 setup to the bottom of the lake. But in a future video, we're gonna go back out with scuba gear as soon as the water's warm enough to find it. It's gonna take about a month, month and a half, and we're gonna see if we can find that rod and reel. If we can, I am gonna do another video if you're interested. It was the new Daiwa Tatula SV TW with the T-wing system. It's only been out on the market for a couple months. Thought I'd give it a try. Loved the reel. It was awesome. It's supposed to have corrosion resistant bearings in it. What's a better test than leave it on the bottom of a lake for a month and see how it does? So we'll see if we can't find that. So let's talk about the setup a little bit. My favorite bait to throw when the water was murky, which it is right now. Where I live, a lot of the lakes that we're fishing are runoff lakes that are filling up from mountain runoff right now from snow, so they stay really cold for a long time. But that also brings in a lot of dirt. Basically, it's like fishing chocolate milk. I had less than a foot of visibility when I got there. By the time I left, water clarity or visibility was probably only 2 feet or less. In that case, a lot of people like to throw crankbaits. My favorite is a bladed swim jig or a chatterbait. I prefer to throw the Z-Man chatterbait, which is this one right here. If you're interested in giving this a try, fishing with Z-Man chatterbait, I'm gonna put a link down in the description below to some Amazon links or something where you can find these and get some for yourself and give them a try. So I'll put a link for the structure bug and I'll put a link for the Z-Man chatterbait. As you can see, the flap on the front used to be silver. I don't ever fish them silver. Any of them I buy or get that are silver, I always paint them or marker them black with a Sharpie. I markered this one. So basically just a bladed swim jig. For a trailer, I almost always, if I'm not using an actual swim bait for a trailer, I'll throw a Strike King structure bug. The way that the back legs kick on it are perfect for the way I like to fish this. So that was the bait that I caught all the fish on, was this particular one right here. Kind of went for somewhat of a bluegill color, but I went a little darker than what I would normally fish for a bluegill color just because the water was so murky. I thought it would help get a little more visibility to the fish. When I throw it, I like to throw it on a medium rod. I like a lot of flex to my rods whenever I'm fishing anything that I'm looking for a reaction strike, a crankbait or a bladed swim jigs, anything like that I'm looking for the fish to hit when I'm reeling. I do that because if you look how much flex this rod has at the tip, it allows the fish to really get the swim jig in its mouth or the crankbait in its mouth. And before I load up on it and really set the hook, it gives it a chance, if it doesn't get it all the way in, to get a second gulp or second bite on the lure. A lot of the times when it feels a little bit of tension, it thinks it, in my opinion, it's just bait fish trying to get away, and it'll actually take a better bite. If I fish a super soft rod like this, not super soft, it's got plenty of backbone down low, but up in the tip, I just like a really soft tip when I'm fishing a swim bait or anything that I'm reeling through the water, a spinner bait, anything like that. So when I'm fishing this, I'll typically throw it out and I'll burn it for about 3 or 4 feet, but I like a really erratic retrieve. I don't like to just reel it into the boat. Sometimes that's what it takes, but for the most part, I'm reeling it and killing it, letting it sink for a second or two. I'm burning it again, stop, burn, stop. Really keeping it mixed up. I don't keep it vibrating the whole time. Sometimes I'll even just hop it across the bottom and then burn it for a few feet, hop it across the bottom. Seems to work really well to get bites, especially in the spring when I'm having a hard time catching fish. I can throw this, I can slow it down, I can fish it like a jig across the bottom. And at the same time, if I want to just burn some water and look for a reaction bite, I can just reel this thing. This blade's gonna kick in and it works great. It puts off a ton of vibration, and in really dirty water like I was fishing, I always fish that structure bug trailer. The way those legs kick on the back is just perfect. It works out great, it puts out a ton of vibration, ton of movement, and the fish have no issue finding this and hitting it. For a reel, like I said, I was throwing the Daiwa. I have it rigged up on a different rod here because on a Black Max, just because what I had in the boat with me. But hopefully I'm gonna order another one of those Daiwa Tatula SVs. 100s, really liked that reel. Thing was almost impossible to backlash. Super easy reel. Anything with the SV spool on it like that, up till this point has always been in like the $300 to $400 price range or up. This is the first time they put it in a price range that I can afford, which was a $200 reel. I really liked it. So hopefully I'll be able to get that back. But anyway, that's what I was fishing to hook up on the fish that I got. Hopefully you stuck through the video. If you liked what you see, if you like the tips, let me know. Comment, like, or subscribe, and I'm gonna go back out, see if I can't catch some more tomorrow.